Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. Way back in the dim and distant mists of time, Games Workshop produced a series of card decks called Citadel Combat Cards, and they were basically top trumps, but I loved them. I had every single deck that they produced. They had decks for dwarves and chaos and space marines and things like that, and this was way before sort of Magic the Gathering and things like that, and so I had every single deck of these cards, and I used to take them to school and we'd play them in class, and I used to make up stories about the characters because the designers had named every single character on every single card rather than just sort of being a knight. It was Sir Radagast the Bold or something, you know. Every single character had a name, and of course every single card had a really nice photograph of a painted Games Workshop miniature. So I had all those cards and I loved them, and I didn't think they'd ever really come back, and then just before Christmas, Games Workshop announced the return of Citadel Combat Cards, and it's the return of Citadel Combat Cards with the original Citadel Combat Cards logo, which was a massive punch in the nostalgia for me and made this something that I just had to buy. And this retails for £10, and I actually paid that in a Games Workshop store because my online retailer of choice wasn't stocking them for some reason. And I think the reason that Games Workshop have re-released these is because they've licensed the Citadel Combat Cards name to some developer to make an online or smartphone app game based on Citadel Combat Cards. But here's the thing, the original Citadel Combat Cards were basically fancy top trumps, and top trumps is, regardless, one of the worst ways to spend your time. Fortunately, the new Citadel Combat Cards, in this case Space Marines versus Chaos, it's not just top trumps. It has a core of a top trumps type game, but it's a little bit more intricate than that, and there's a little bit more going on. So I thought I would do a quick video and show you what it's all about, so you can see whether you might be interested in picking up a deck for yourself. And it is one box, is a two-player game. You get 2 decks of 30 cards, 30 Space Marines and 30 Chaos Marines and various assorted demons and things. And yeah, okay, let's take a quick look at it. So, these are what the cards look like. You get a pretty nice photograph of a beautifully painted Games Workshop miniature, and this is, all of these are from the newer ranges of, there's no classic models in here. It's all of their newer stuff, obviously. And each card has a faction symbol, and each card has a battlefield role, and the game does come with handy dandy cards that tell you what the factions mean. Obviously this is the Grey Knights, the Space Wolves, the Ultramarines, the Dark Angels and the Blood Angels. That makes up the Imperial Loyalists deck, and these are the various battlefield symbols, and this just means that the skull symbol can stand for any of those battlefield symbols. And then at the bottom you've got 3 stats in a kind of very top trumpsy sort of way. You have ranged combat, melee combat and psychic combat, and yes, as in the original Citadel Combat Cards, every character has a cool little name, so they have a little bit more character than just being generic grunts on the battlefield. So you get 30 of those for the Space Marine deck, and then you get 30 for the Chaos deck. So the way the game plays out, it plays out over 6 rounds. Players start by, they take 5 cards from their deck. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and they need to pick 3. And generally you're looking for cards that have high numbers, but you're also looking for sets of cards that match either the faction symbol or the battlefield role symbol. Now, I've got 2 Space Wolves here, but one of these Space Wolves is quite terrible. But I also have 2 of these battlefield symbols here. I think these mean mean heavy support or something. Yeah, I'll look that up in a minute in the rules for you. But that's one of my issues with this game is I don't find the iconography particularly useful. It's not very easy to grok. It's one of the things that I have to keep sort of going. So what does that symbol mean again? Which is a bit of a bugbear when it's such a simple card game. It shouldn't be something you have to keep reminding yourself what those icons mean. And the less said about this little reference card, the better, because yeah, those I don't think that's well thought out iconography for explaining what they do. Well, anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. So you need to pick 5 cards. So 3 cards from 5. So let's say I'm going to pick this guy, and this guy, and I'll put the other 2 to one side. These will be my strategy deck. Now, in each round, you have an attacker and a defender. The attacker will pick which type of combat we're going to have for the first battle and the third battle, and the defender will pick the type of battle for the second battle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these are the Chaos Dudes. So let's say that the Chaos Dudes decide to pick this guy. Oh look, Malignant Mites, little Nurglings. Got to pick Nurglings, even though they're rubbish. Okay, that is not a strategic choice of cards or anything. I've just picked them, and then they have a strategy deck as well. So, once you've got that situation, everybody flips their cards over so we can see what's going on. And I appreciate those cards are upside down to you, but hopefully you get the idea. So as I'm the attacker in this round, I will be picking whether we're going to do ranged, melee, or psychic combat. Obviously, I'm not going to pick psychic combat because I don't have any. So I'm going to pick ranged, because my opponent has no ranged. Now, this is the top trumpsy bit of the game. I've picked my value, my opponent's value is lower, I've effectively won that round. However, there is an extra element to the rules that actually allows you to confer bonuses during fights. If you have any matching faction symbols on your side, for each faction symbol that matches the current combatant's faction, you get +10 to whichever figure you've chosen, and the same again for the battlefield roll. So my value is 20, however, I have another guy with the same battlefield roll, so he actually confers a +10 bonus, so my value is actually 30. This guy over here, he has this particular faction symbol, and this card here has the same faction symbol, and look at that. They've printed the faction symbol and the battlefield roll the wrong way round on this card. That's sloppy. But never mind. So, he's conferring a +10 bonus on him as well. So the actual final score is 30 to this guy and 10 to this guy. So he still loses, but you know, in other situations that could have been different. I mean, if it was a draw at this point and then I had 2 cards with the same symbols or combinations of symbols that matched, that would actually push it over the edge for a win for the other player. Whoever wins the round gets to take the card as a victory point, and that goes to one side, and you'll top those up at the end of the 6 rounds. And then we move on to the second fight. In this particular case, the defender would pick the fight. He's obviously going to pick melee. You wouldn't really pick this card to go into a fight situation because it's so utterly terrible at everything. You would be using this card for its battlefield roll, which I will get to in a minute, because this is basically a sacrificial card. But anyway, in this case, obviously I've won this combat, so I would get that as a victory point. And then we go to the third one, and again, I've won that round too. So because I would pick ranged, his range is 1. He no longer has any bonuses from other cards, so whereas this guy's still getting a +10 bonus from this guy. So you know, that would be a whitewash across the board for me on that particular round. And that's basically how a round of combat plays out. But there's one wrinkle in the rules, which makes things more interesting, but also it adds that complication in needing to remember what battlefield roles mean, because you have these two cards in your hand as well, and each card in your hand has a battlefield role that has a specific purpose. And when you begin your combat and you're working out all your values and stuff, you can choose to play one of the cards that you've got held back in reserve for its battlefield role. And if we look at the hideous instruction leaflet, it's got a list of the battlefield roles. So the HQ skull says you can change the battle to a melee battle or a shooting battle, so you can suddenly flip what you're doing. So if you've chosen something and then your opponent plays a card that gives them a bonus in some way, you can sort of change it again to try and get that edge back. Troop types, which have the triangle, say put this card in place of your card in the current battle, put the other card back in your hand. So this is one of those situations like this card here. Like I said, if you're going to lose the battle anyway, you might as well sort of use it to swap this card in. These guys will take the hit and you might get a stronger card back into your hand, which, if it has this symbol as well, you can keep swapping cards in and out to try and get an advantage over your opponent. Elites, it says your opponent's card gains no bonuses for cards with matching battlefield roles in this battle. That's obviously very good. So like I've got one there, which again, this card isn't very good in a combat. You might not want to put him up in the firing line, but if you hold him back in reserve, you can actually use it to negate your opponent's bonuses for a particular round. The fast attack units say switch your middle card with one to either side, so you can actually just suddenly do a little shifteroo like that, and it might suddenly flip the battle in your favour. So that can be a lot of fun. And then there's the heavy support icon, which says your opponent cannot play a card as a strategy in this battle. Note that this can only be used by the defender. So that's sort of your second round advantage. Because your attacker gets to pick for the first and third rounds, the defender has an extra additional advantage that on those 2 rounds they can play heavy support in, which will help them level the playing field somewhat. And that's it. So yeah, it is top trumps. It's top trumps with a battle line and a small hand of extra options. The biggest problem, like I say, is remembering what the iconography means. I've just gone through these abilities, and so, like I say, the skull. What did I say they did? Let's go back. So yeah, the skull allowed you to change the battle to a melee battle or a shooting battle. That's what that means. Put this card in place of your card in the current battle, put the other card back in your hand. See, I mean, it's an effort to make a language independent reference card, but I just don't think it's clear enough that it's quite okay. That maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's my brain. Tell me in the comments that I'm an idiot. Go on, I don't mind. But other people may be looking at these thinking, yeah, that's perfectly clear to me. That makes perfect sense. But the way my brain's working, I've had difficulty remembering what these battlefield roles do, and it's the one thing that's kind of slowed down gameplay for a game that should really take 10 minutes. It's a 10-minute top trumps style game with twiddles. And yeah, it's better than top trumps. It reminds me very much of the Iron Man battling card game, which had Iron Man and Warmonger, and you laid out a row of cards and you worked through one battle after another in a sequence, and you had extra cards in your hand which you could bring down that would confer bonuses to kind of get an edge. But if you use those cards too soon, you had no cards left in your hand, and as you worked your way through, you know, your opponent might sort of be biding their time to hit you really hard in a later round. And this feels very similar, but slightly more stripped back, and much more accessible, I would say. I mean, Iron Man Battling card game isn't heavy going, it's not a heavy going game, but this is very much a lighter experience. I think it's just number comparing and then symbol matching. It's number comparing and symbol matching, but you know, it's fun, it's light and breezy. You can put this deck of cards in your pocket, and if you're waiting for your game group to set up at your board game club or whatever, you can have a quick game of this. Or, you know, if you're sat on the bus with your mate on the way to school, you can play this, or in the playground, you know, whatever. It's, you know, it's like I say, it's £10. If you can find an online vendor, you'll be able to get it for a bit less. And yeah, it's pretty good fun. I mean, it's not going to set the world alight. It's not going to blow anybody's mind, I don't think. But it's fun. It's good fun, and it's accessible, and it's a fun way to kind of explore more of the Games Workshop universe. It's a good way to see other models from the ranges. You can use them as painting guides and reference guides if you're painting, and you know, it's a big nostalgia thing for me as well. Even though the game is completely different, it's a different beast to what it was back in the day. It still has that same vibe for me that I really appreciate. So I'm happy to have a copy of this in my collection, and I hope I've explained all the rules correctly. I'm not very good at from memory reiterating rules. Normally I would reserve that for my written reviews, where you know, I've got time to make sure that I'm putting things down correctly and not skimming over rules or making it sound that a rule plays a certain way. But hopefully I've done okay, and this is giving you at least a taste of what the game's about. It really is a very simple product, but it is fun. Check it out. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye everybody. Bye bye.